Welcome to UCF In Print. I'm Alice Collier. Trying to describe art is about as difficult as getting a virus off your computer. What is a true work of art to me may seem utterly ridiculous to you. Not only that, an object regarded as art today may not have been thought of as a piece of art when it was first made, nor was the person who made it necessarily regarded as an artist. I want you to see this book, for example. This limited edition handbound book is a collector's item. The book is entitled Celestial Hitchhiker by Madison Key Francis, who has spearheaded an extraordinary art venture on UCF's campus. Welcome, Key. Hold up the book so we can see it. It truly is rare. Tell us what it feels like to have this accepted into the Yale Fine Arts Museum.
Well, I think I'm very flattered by that. I think it's a vote of confidence for all we've been trying to do here at UCF, in the sense that we've been interested in maintaining the art discipline in the book arts, and that Yale would buy this book for their fine art collection, I think really speaks well for what we're trying to do. I think Yale uses their fine art collection as a teaching tool. So the fact that we're doing something here that will be used to teach people at Yale, I think it's flattering.
Well, you're a professor of art, and this is your baby from beginning to end. You've had complete control. How did it feel when you got the word that they were going to buy this?
Well, I was, like I said, I was very flattered. We have works in other good collections, the Getty Museum, the National Gallery of American Art. A lot of good museums have purchased the works we've made here, but Yale has an especially fine collection, so that was very good news to find out. I mean, that was actually the first book we sold of this printing. So to find out that the first book went to Yale was
a good sign.
A good sign, I think.
You're doing good work.
Good work.
Okay, tell us about this. I mean, it is beautiful. I have never seen anything like it.
Well, I think the definition for artist book is primarily that the function of the book is an art in itself, and generally speaking, the work that goes into the book is very labor intensive, and with the primary focus being to produce a piece of the highest quality possible, and you just try not to cut any corners, and you do whatever is necessary to carry your idea to fruition. The book itself, I think, is printed this particular book is printed with a combination of letterpress, which is almost an antiquated process now, and new digital printing technologies. So a lot of the design work goes on in the computer. A lot of the execution is hands-on, in some cases old wood type and lead type, and in some cases it's all new digital technology printing. So I think what we're trying to do at Hoop Snake Press and Flying Horse Editions is to print books that use the characteristics of all the different various printing technologies from ancient to modern, and to choose the ones that fit the theme of the book the best.
May I see the book?
Sure.
Let's go over this, because from beginning to end, from cover to cover, you have done this. So tell me about the cover, because this is hand bound, like we said. Right.
Well, the cover is printed by letterpress technology, wooden type for the Celestial Hitchhiker, and then the images, the stars.
I'm going to be like Vanna.
Right. Well, the stars and the images, the gold images, are hot foil stamped onto the surface. By etching metal into those shapes and then heating them and stamping the foil onto the surface of the printed material. And then that's hand bound. The book is hand bound and stitched by Larry Cooper of Gardy Lou Handmade Books, who is also working with Flying Horse Editions and has his own private bindery. So, each book is individually stitched, page at a time, and hand sewn, and then the cardboard pieces are covered with glue and hand. The materials are hand applied, so it's a unique process. Just the binding process itself is unique in that regard. That because it's time consuming, but it's beautiful. So the choice of paper, handmade papers most often, and the choice of sometimes even the colored threads of the stitching. Or in this case, it's a simple white, but in some cases we've used a variety of different colors in binding the books. So it's considered every aspect of the book is considered and thought through, and the artist. Sometimes they're visiting artists who do these projects with us. In this case, I'm the artist, but they come and have absolute control of the complete process from beginning to end, and that's much different, I think, than trying to pull together a writer and a designer and an illustrator and a binder, and have them all work in collaboration. We do that as well, but I think the idea that one person, in my case, one person has written the poetry and the story here and has done the illustrations and has printed the book and set the type.
It makes it an artist's book.
Makes it an artist's book, yeah. I think it's a complete statement.
As opposed to being mass-produced.
Right, as opposed to being a mass-produced object.
But tell us about the title, Celestial Hitchhiker. What tell us about that?
Sure. Well, Celestial Hitchhiker really started out. There's a quote from Jack Kerouac's book On the Road, which I used as a reference, but he's hitchhiking across Wyoming and is really taken with the stars. He's riding in the back of a flatbed truck, and the stars are just beautiful, and he's looking across at a red light in Laramie. And I mean, it's a very romantic idea of hitchhiking, this idea of Kerouac and On the Road, and was, I think, part of a generation, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, that dreamed of freedom and being on the road.
The open highway.
The open highway, yeah. And so what I sort of tried to do was to point out some of the things that had changed since the freedoms of those days, and to maybe combine this romance of Kerouac's vision of traveling America by hitchhiking, and combine it with a darker story about hitchhiking, and then to maybe have a monument to Kerouac in that romantic vision. And the monument, since I think a monument for Jack Kerouac should be something more ephemeral, is the monument itself is simply all of the roads that, if you connected them by hitchhiking, would spell the name Jack Kerouac.
Oh, show us. Find that page.
Yeah, okay. Would connect to spell the name of Jack Kerouac across the United States.
All the highways.
All the highways. If you hitchhiked them, they would spell the name Jack Kerouac. So that was the idea of the monument. Would be a monument that you could fold up and put in your knapsack if you were hitchhiking. And
this is so original. Did you come up with this idea?
Well, I guess I did, yeah. And the idea was to try to make a monument for this romantic attitude about being on the road, and that seemed to me to fit the theme.
So what inspired you?
Well, I started this book under some funding from the University of Memphis about 8-10 years ago, and it's been this long and coming to fruition. But the idea was the idea of pilgrims being on the road, and all of the pilgrims through time that sort of struggled with the idea of traveling the real highways of the map, and then traveling the highways to a more inward path. To a spiritual search, and I wrote this artist statement. Should I?
Yes, I want you to.
Okay. Just forget explanations. Forget them, okay? Sal Paradise and Homer and Bunyan and Gurdjieff and Ouspensky and Odysseus and Jack Kerouac and Christian and Dean Moriarty and Hess and Siddhartha and Steppenwolf thumbing through space. Obscure. Forever together, the dreamer and the dreamed. Freedom and responsibility, eternity and the present, the riverbanks of Beulah Land and the celestial city. Imagine a Mobius strip, an endless, twisting, figure-8, worn tire tread loop, connecting the spiritual road inward with the road to any pilgrim's distant destination. If you've been on those roads, you've seen the things that never change. Jack Kerouac had seen them. He wrote about them in On the Road. Sal Paradise alone, hitching out of Jersey on a desolate Highway 6, in the rain with tears in his eyes. Paradise in the back of a flatbed truck, facing an expansive sky and the constancy of the stars, and the surprising penetration of the crisp black night by distant red light on the road to Cheyenne. The red lights, the constant stars, the tears and the isolation are part of every pilgrim's road. Imagine, forever together, the characters and their authors. Imagine a monument to them, something of the road. It couldn't be constructed of stone or metal, for that would weigh a traveler down. It should fold up and fit in a knapsack and be as big as this country. Imagine a concept. A monument that worked for one would work for all, just change the names. Travel your roads, dream your dreams, but remember, dreams are like yachts. If you have to keep asking how much they cost, you probably shouldn't own one.
That's good.
So I think that was sort of the beginning of the book. Actually, I wrote the introduction and the artist's statement before I actually wrote the story. I had an idea of what I wanted to do in the story.
Did you just get a vision that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I think so, yeah. That's pretty much how I work. I work jointly on visual art pieces, and I write all at the same time. I mean, I will be working on a group of paintings or sculpture pieces and writing in the morning or in the afternoon. And a lot of times the images come first and then the words follow that. So in some ways I think the image maybe of the map with Jack Kerouac across it came first, and then the idea of those dots with the roads that you could hitchhike and make those letters maybe came next, and then the idea of this romantic idea of hitchhiking across America and sort of a dark story, and then the next thing was the story. So I think in that regard the work comes different ways, different times. Sometimes I take stories that I've written and work the other way towards visual material too, and do shows of paintings and sculpture.
Have you hitchhiked yourself?
Oh, I have when I was much younger. That was in the 60s, but not great
Life
distances.
was different then.
Well, I think it was. I think there's always been an element of danger in it, and there's always been a romance about it. But
did you take some of those experiences and use them for the book?
I think, yeah, that's always the case. I think with authors, I think you can't write about anything you haven't experienced. I think,
or at least write about it well. How's that?
That's good, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I would settle for that. I think you can project, or you can take an experience that you've had and maybe change the location or the context, but somewhere you have to have had some emotional experience that paralleled, or it's very hard to write about well. To use your term.
Now you've written, narrated, and also illustrated, or have these pieces of art in this as well.
Right. Yeah. There are works in here. They're the pieces that are have maybe more to do with the idea of the story or the idea of hitchhiking. I mean, in one case, there's a bridge with just a line drawing of a knapsack and a person asleep under a bridge, and then tarpaulins that were mentioned in Kerouac's On the Road piece, and a number of images that relate to Kerouac, and a number of images that relate to the story itself. The actual story illustrations
It's a short story.
is a short story, yeah, about 7 pages long.
What's it about?
Well, it's about a young man who's an art student who's trying to get home from the university, and he decides to hitchhike, and he gets set out at a very lonely section of road in Egypt, Mississippi, which is about the furthest place from any local town or establishment, and so he's very uncomfortable in this place and nervous about it, the growing darkness, and the idea is he'll be on this road all night long waiting for the next ride because traffic's slowing. And a group of young African Americans come by and offer him a ride, but this is the 60s, and he's nervous about doing that. And they have a good laugh about that, about this young white man being scared to ride with him, and he's nervous about it. And they come back and bring him a bottle of whiskey, and says if he's going to be on the road all night, he might as well have something to drink, and turn out to be supporters and have a good laugh about it, all of them. And Then the next car along is a person who's he is seen around the campus picking up women and picking up men both, and primarily a sexual predator, and proposes that they have sex. And the short story is about his negotiating his way out of that arrangement and getting a ride to where he wants to go. And the negotiation itself is funny. So it's
Read us some of that last paragraph.
Yeah, after he makes this negotiation, he's found himself back on the road, and this quote comes back in a lot of ways the same way that the Kerouac quote from the back of the truck. He looked at the stars, they blurred with tears. He watched them through the blur. The Cadillac sped along the highway. The overhang of trees lit by the headlights flashed in his peripheral vision, but the stars remained constant, distant and cool and constant. The distance between the stars could be no greater than the distance between him and the man in the front seat of this Cadillac. How different we all are and how lonely, he thought. He watched the stars and let the loneliness sink in till it filled his whole body.
What do you hope people take away from your book?
Oh, I think a celebration of life, maybe. I think there's penetrating idea about human behavior and the humanness of all of our existences, and I think the work itself, the paintings and the drawings and the illustrations are works that celebrate handcraft and marks made by the hand and marks made by humans, and communication as an experiential process that ties one human to another. I mean, I think we're all able to look at visual art and respond to color and line and form, and it's something that transcends language and is sort of a unique and universal human experience. So I hope I kind of cross a lot of those boundaries with the work, that the writing is something that draws a certain audience in, and I communicate to them on a textual level, and then I try to communicate on a textural level with the books and the handmade paper and the printing and the color and the technology that's involved in the book.
In the book, you have like transparent pages with artwork on them.
Right.
Tell me what you were thinking when you did this.
Well, a lot of there is this idea, and it's one of the great things about these pages that are transparent. I think it's very interesting. And I've done this on tissue paper, very thin tissue paper too. But these archival acetates and things are real interesting because you can lay that transparent image over a body of text, and the text becomes subliminal, but it's actually part of the image. And then if you turn the page back to the other side of the page, you see it against yet another background. In one case, you see this image, in this case of
I knew there was a reason you did this.
Siddhartha. You see that you really read the image of Siddhartha there as more like a visual art piece. Then when you flip it back over the text, it's less clear as an image, but the whole thing, text and the image, are united in an interesting way by looking through the image to the text.
I like getting into an artist's mind. And the same with this one, I assume.
Right, that's an image of Kerouac in midlife.
Okay.
And if you look at how that sort of beautifully overlays that page, I think, it's at once obscured, but then adds visual information to the text that's there.
And let's see, you have some.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah.
Where there's Oklahoma is okay. But they're just experiments in typography and using the same format that's present in the in part of in many of the aspects of the book. And there's a hitchhiking thumb down there on the bottom of that page. The drawing. These are lithographs and images from the
And this one.
Yeah.
What the hitchhiker sees, I
Yeah,
guess.
right.
And then I like this in the back.
Yeah, that's a harder page to show, but it's a fold-out.
Oh, you have to grab it. So
Yeah, it's a fold-out MapQuest map that has all the roads that spell the name.
Adding a bit of new technology.
Yeah, it's a digital print of all the roads that, if you connected them, hitchhiked them and connected them, and followed the map, you would spell the name Jack Kerouac across the United States. And it says in the middle there, the Jack Kerouac
And
Monument.
you thought of this?
Yeah, it was. It started out originally. I had a map. I've been working on this book a long time, but originally I had a map that was a big lithographic map with the roads that folded out like just a map you'd get at a service station.
Mm-hmm.
And then MapQuest came along and
made it easy.
Made it easy. You could actually show the MapQuest information. Go online and MapQuest would connect it for you to spell J for Jack, or so that was interesting.
You may have some people follow that.
Well, that would be great if they would.
That
Somebody
would be
asked
quite
me.
a tribute.
Somebody asked me if I actually hitchhiked across America on these roads, and I said no, I hadn't. It was an idea of mine, but no, I haven't hitchhiked it. I've hitchhiked not
lot,
very
but
much. Not that.
not
yeah,
spelling his name.
Not spelling anybody's name. You would have to have a lot of time, I think, to do that.
Now you have published 50 of these.
Right.
And tell us how much they are.
Well, the books currently are selling for $750 a piece, and it's a limited edition book. And as we were talking,
for collectors.
For collectors, right? And the idea is that when we start out to make one of these books, the idea is just to do everything the absolute top form all the way through, and not to worry about the price, and not to even think about the end price. But just to try to, if we have to run a page through the press 15 or 16 times to get the color build up we want to, then we just run it through the press 15 or 16 times. And we don't, that's why we make limited editions, not more than 50, but in most cases. But the idea is just to do a really high quality, hand-bound, beautiful edition of a book on handmade paper and use a variety of technologies. And at the end of that process, we pretty much add up our time and add up the cost of paper, which is, these pages, which are French mold-made papers, about $6 a sheet. So, if you just start to total up the paper and the type, you've run into quite a bit of money to do a 75 sheet page book. So we don't make a lot of money at it, but it's a labor of love, and I think cheap for the price. There's all of if each of those hand-done prints were marketed by themselves, they would probably sell $250 or $300 a piece, and there'd be 15 or 20 of those in a book. So, So
you didn't necessarily do this for the money?
No, I don't think you do it for the money.
What do you do it for?
Well, I think to have absolute control over what you do. I was in Italy in about 1992 on the Rockefeller Foundation grant, and I came back, and I was there with a group of writers, and I was a visual artist, and I did some readings when I was there with them. And of course I was very nervous about reading to authors, and when I was reading, they all put their hands up over their face, and I got really embarrassed. I thought they were really bored with what I was reading.
Rejecting you, huh?
Yeah, but as it turned out, I came up later, and they said, well, we have some publishers that we think would be interested in publishing your work. And I said, well, why did you put your hands up over your eyes? And they said, well, we did that because we wanted to concentrate on the wording, and we didn't want to have a lot of visual information clouding what we were hearing. So you find writers will often cover their eyes when they're listening to another person read, so they can really focus on the words. But it scared me for a minute. I was very embarrassed. I thought I'd never read in public. I thought these authors were just devastated to have to listen to my text.
And quite the contrary.
Yeah, it turned out to be a different thing. But after I did this, I decided to talk to the publishers that they had suggested, and And there was several interesting offers to publish the short stories just as short stories, but they were more interested in doing a trade edition book, and they didn't want to use the quality of printing that I wanted, and they didn't want to illustrate them the way I wanted them illustrated, with woodcuts and hand-done prints. And I can understand why. I mean, it's a very expensive operation. So I bought a small press that had been given to another sculptor friend of mine on a bad debt, and I bought the letterpress and printed my first book, and myself with hand set type, and that was an interesting project. I had never printed anything before, and it was all a learning process. But that book did well, and the National Gallery in Washington bought that book, and I sold the majority of the edition and decided to do another one, and so it's developed into a business that my wife and I now run and administer.
Are you teaching others to do this?
Well, the people that came here working with the press are now teaching book binding and book arts in the art department, and we hope in the near future to have a specialization in book arts. Right now, it's just possible to take printmaking and type and design, and then we have a couple of book arts classes they can take. And so primarily now the people that are taking those courses are painters and printers that wish to know more about the process. But yes, I'm interested in teaching a lot of this. We have apprentices and graduate teaching assistants, graduate research assistants that work in the press, and they do much more extensive work and get to work with the visiting poets and writers that come in, and the other artists that come in and do books, and I think that's a great experience for them.
Well, Key, it is a beautiful book. It's called Celestial Hitchhiker, and from beginning to end you've had complete control, and it is just a pleasure to look at it, and I now understand why you didn't want to give us a copy of this. But it's certainly one that I'm sure you're very proud of.
Well, I'm proud of it, and like I say, the Flying Horse Editions has a website on the art department link in the UCF website, and it's possible to go through Flying Horse Editions and purchase these books if you're a collector and interested in these things.
Well, we wish you the best of luck on this.
Well, thank you.
I'm afraid that will have to be the last word. We're out of time. Again, the limited edition book is called Celestial Hitchhiker. That's our program for now. Thanks so much for watching UCF In Print. I'm Alice Collier. Until next time, goodbye.